In 2018, Monster High had vanished from shelves with little to no word of a comeback as a brand. Aside from the occasional collector doll release, they disappeared. Throughout those years, the fanbase slowly accepted their retirement with no talk or expectation of a reboot. Until 2022. But this wasn't like the knockoff off-brand baby doll low-quality lame-ass reboot we got in 2016. This time, the characters' designs were completely different, with their storylines, personalities, and fashions being altered or completely changed from the original material. The brand was unrecognizable and had a complete rewrite and complete redo. It is now successfully back on shelves with consistent and high-quality releases. However, this generation has received a wide range of opinions, the loudest of them being negative. So let's talk about why. The first and most important point I want to bring up is the drastic change to the overall look and aesthetic of the dolls, because this is very, very different from this. So let's look at some examples from G1. The design team said that they got the characters' designs from a wide range of fashions, the majority of them being alternative. We have romantic gothic designs with the vampires. We have the scene girls, pastel goth, the preppy punky schoolgirl, 2000s glam, steampunk, rockabilly retro girls, the skater, the surfer, the nerds, the jocks. The list goes on and on. The fashion realm of Monster High was very stylistic, unique, and eye-catching. Every design was very well thought out. For example, Ghoulia is a zombie. Her design is heavily inspired by 50s, 60s rockabilly style. People speculate that it's because Night of the Living Dead came out in 1968. Through each design, you can tell that the writers and the character designers were really passionate about making each design unique and special. They were extremely clever and creatively talented. This made the designs very attractive, and not just to children but adults too, because how could you not love them? They weren't just dolls in the kids aisle at Target, they were creatively well thought out masterpieces that a lot of people loved, and extremely different than anything else we had in the doll world at the time. Even just walking into a Walmart or a Target, your eyes kind of are drawn to the Monster High section. It was such a contrast to see creepy monster dolls around boxes full of blonde, basic characters playing roles of moms or bakers or whatever. It's just so different from that. It was so dark and edgy, which sounds satire, but it really was. I remember being little and seeing Monster High dolls and just being like, they're so unique and beautiful and I want one. And they had this edge to them that just made you feel cool when you had one. This realm, this world that Monster High was living in, it is not living in that world any longer. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons why people are not fans. G3 fashion displays modern day mainstream trends with vibrant flashy colors and designs that attract the younger generation. It makes sense, it's a toy brand for children. The dolls are leaning more into the sweet sparkly designs rather than the creepy haunted monster styles that the brand originally played with. The fashion seems mainstream rather than unique. Some people argue that this makes it unattractive and dims the initial sparkle. Other people love the new fashion and argue that a monster doesn't have to be alternative to be a monster. Those just tied really well together in G1. In my opinion, personal preference of the fashions that you admire and wear will determine whether or not you like the new generation. Most long-lasting Monster High fans appreciate or indulge in the same kinds of fashion that G1 has because the characters are fashion icons. This makes the brand relatable. It makes it aesthetic. It makes you want it in your room. It makes you want it on your screen, in your phone. It's relatable to you and your interests. And when you pull this factor out in the newer generation, how it's no longer really gothic or alternative or creepy or monstery, at least not as much as it used to be, that's a really big piece of the puzzle to pull out. But if that piece wasn't super important to you or didn't draw you in a lot, you probably will love it. When you pull out what made the brand, that group of people, aka like the original fan base, isn't going to be pleased. The aesthetic change was just too drastic. Another one of the driving factors of why people don't really love Generation 3 is it's too relatable to our real world. Monster High has always displayed modern day media like magazines or Fright Tube, Eye Coffins, Justin Biter, things like that. So it's supposed to relate to teenagers and be kind of corny, but it was always like twisted in a creepy alternative dimension. And G3 still does this, but I think it hits a little too close to home. Like, the dolls come with phones, Nintendo Switches, Polaroids, Pop-Tarts, Cheeto Puffs, monster-y forms of snacks and drinks we have here. It's just slightly more direct, where it's almost trendy and mainstream in a way where it's not uninteresting, but kind of pulls away the mystique that G1 had. People complain it takes away the edge of the characters, makes them a little bit too, I don't want to say dorky, but too relatable, to where it's no longer over here in this otherworldly dimension. It's too close to where it's like, ugh. Original Monster High is so different and unique and unattainable that it's so intriguing because it's so not real, if that makes sense. But the new generation is a lot more, I want to say, for you pagey, like TikTok-y. I can't find the words for what I'm trying to describe, but it's too mainstream. But on the other hand, this approach can be seen as way more appropriate for a line of dolls that is sold to and advertised to children. It's also said that when the dolls come with all of these accessories, it gives the child more room to play with them, and we're also given more of the character through their personal selection of accessories. G1 dolls came with a brush, a pet, and a bag or an accessory, and the new dolls come with way more stuff. People complain that the mystery and the edge of the characters has kind of been stripped, and before, when they seemed like otherworldly fashion icons, they now seem to be presented as relatable teenagers. And just that, they've always been very teenagery, very relatable, very mainstream with the time, like Justin Biter. There's always been references to pop culture, but at the same time they've been living in this world of like glitz and glamour and creepiness and hauntedness and fashion, and it's just so different, and now it's a little bit too like almost bland. However, another really important point to bring up is the amount of backlash Monster High got in the 2010s. A huge complaint Generation 1 received was that it was way too mature and way too sexy to be sold to young girls. A lot of parents were concerned that their children playing with dolls that had dramatic makeup, bold, inappropriate outfits, and unrealistically tiny bodies would have a negative influence on their child's self-perception. Many moms, even mine back then, preferred their children to play with Barbies or baby dolls because they were more relatable or appropriate to them. The other side to that is that kids don't think that much about the toys they play with. They just love dolls for what they are. I know for me as a child, I didn't really like attach myself, at least the way I looked to the dolls. I perceived them to be from a different world, so I didn't feel an expectation to look like them or be them because they were just so monstery and unique and different. There was no connection in a way that would make me insecure or feel like I need to dress a certain way or act a certain way. But that's just my experience, and I obviously can't speak for every girl in the world. A more extreme view was many conservative or highly religious parents didn't want their children playing with demonic evil dolls because they are monsters. Yeah, so Monster High was just very controversial, and I know that I literally wasn't allowed to have them. I could only play with my friends. Nostalgia. Nostalgia is very, very powerful. It's like a thick glasses lens. When you create a brand that millions of people fall in love with as children, any changes you make to it will not be well received by at least someone, especially when the original designs were just that good. Like, you can't beat G1 Monster High. You can't. It's stuck in time as genuinely one of the most iconic, gorgeous, perfect doll lines to ever exist. The fan base fell in love with the exaggerated glamorousness of the original dolls, where they're now kind of sweet and dorky. They lost their edge. They're too different. There's no nostalgic value because they're basically unrecognizable. And when you take a brand as big as Monster High that had such a large impact, outrage is expected when you create a new line or reboot it. This is not this, and this is definitely not this. They might have the same name, they might be the same character, but they are not in any way similar. Nostalgia is powerful, and it will blind you, and it will stop the success of a brand if the children that grew up with your brand no longer recognize it. Another point to note is the rise of alternative fashion in social media makes Monster High 10 times more lovable. So many of us, especially girls, grew up with Monster High and are now fans of alternative fashion, which makes Monster High just that much more lovable, just that much more attractive. This does change the demographic because you have to remember that they're not making dolls for the people who grew up with Monster High. They're making dolls for the new generation growing up with Monster High. They're for children, they're not for adults. So when something holds nostalgic value and you have attachment, and you have like an aesthetic similarity with it, it's over. Buying a doll at the store is also a ritualistic activity that a lot of us grew up with and that we still hold on to today. There's a large percentage of adult doll collectors who are into that because they had dolls when they were younger. A lot of us had a childhood in the toy section at Target. I know I pass the doll section almost every single time I go to a store that has one. Just how could I not? I have to look. Monster High has deep roots in so many people, and it sounds corny because it's like it's just a children's toy, but it's really not. Letting go of the originals and accepting the new, less glamorous, less creepy, less nostalgic line of dolls is easier for some than it is for others. I personally am not the hugest fan of Generation 3 because of my own preferences and my own interests. I think they give us a little taste of the old dolls every now and again in some of them, some of the designs, but for the most part, Ju-on is dead from G3. It's not dead and gone. Obviously, they do the Creep productions and the real drama, and it's not gone. We still have lots of opportunities to get the original dolls. I will say the G3 dolls are, if we're talking in my opinion, are getting a lot better. We must give credit where credit is due. In G3, the dolls are high quality. They do come with a lot of thought and accessories and their own lore that is maybe a little less tone deaf. We have a lot more diversity in the molds of dolls we're given. They're not all shaped like malnourished Tim Burton sticks. That has its own artistic touch to it. That's gorgeous, but these are dolls that children are playing with, and I think, modeling what bodies actually look like, I mean, they're still dolls, but maybe a bit more realism could be very effective and important. And I think there have been changes made that are good and necessary and well thought out. But I also think there's some that are frustrating and really take away from the beauty of the original Monster High. But yeah, those were my main points. Subscribe to me if you want more dorky rants about toy lines or things like that in general. My next video is on Shopkins, so stay tuned because I know the baddies who grew up with Monster High also grew up with Shopkins. So I will have a new video up next week. If you're wondering where my other videos went, they either got copyright or I would watch them back and the quality of the audio was really upsetting me, and I didn't want people to have to suffer through it. And I think I was also being a little too harsh and a little too biased. So I decided to just do a little redo. I will be back next week, so you better be ready, 'cause I'm coming for you with another video. It's coming right your way. Watch your back.